Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Councillor Steve Pitt. I'm the leader of Portsmouth City Council, and I'll be chairing this meeting. Bit of housekeeping before we get started. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble by Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at Guildhall reception should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Everyone speaking via a microphone will be recorded and broadcast on the website, including those making deputations. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones, and please remember to switch them off when you have finished. We have all read the reports, so officers, please just highlight any developments that have occurred since publication or any other pertinent points that you think should be drawn to our attention. We'll start with introductions. To my left,
Peter Bolt, City Solicitor.
Natalie Brommer-Pearl, Chief Executive.
Anna Martin, Democratic Services.
Chris Ward, Director of Finance and Resources.
Hugh Mason, Cabinet Member for Planning Policy.
Susie Horton, Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education.
Ian Holder, Cabinet Member for Safety in the Community.
Darren Sanders, Cabinet Member for Housing and Tackling Homelessness.
Kimberly Barrett, Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Greening the City.
Dave Ashmore, Cabinet Member for Environmental Services.
Tom Southall, Assistant Director for Economy, Planning and Transport.
Natasha Edmonds, Director of Corporate Services.
Lee Todd, Head of Marketing, Communications and Engagement.
Andy Biddle, Director of Adult Social Care.
Claire Looney, Commissioning and Partnership Manager for Culture and Leisure.
Mark Collings, Seafront Operations Officer.
thank you all very much, and welcome to the meeting. Members, apologies for absence today from Councillor Lee Hunt, who has a dental appointment, and also Councillor Vernon Jackson, who is visiting his husband in hospital. Any other apologies for absence that I'm unaware of? We've got apologies from Councillor Winnington for lateness as he's attending other council business, but he hopes to join us for the two items on the agenda that are particularly within his area, and we will postpone those to the end of the meeting. Sorry, Andy. Anyone else? No? Okay, thank you very much. Members, any declarations of interest? None. Okay, in that case we come to the record of the previous decision meeting. That's the minutes from the last meeting. Are we all happy with those? Can I have a proposal, please?
I can propose.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. Councillor Sanders is seconding. Okay, we're now on item 4, which is the Tipner West Horsey Island East regeneration, pages 17 to 28 of the reports. And I assume, Tom, you're presenting. Over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Good afternoon, members. So just, I suppose, by a very brief introduction of the report. There are no updates as to the point of publish, but I would like to just point out a few points within the report, if I may. In particular, starting with the recommendations, 2.2, which refers to the 7 principles. Whilst it's clear within the report, it's not clear within the recommendations. So I'd just like to make the point that those principles are as agreed by Council from October 2023. The rest of the report gives an update from the project team on actions that have been placed following both October and December Council meetings. There are clearly a number of ongoing issues yet to be resolved, and I dare say there will be a number of papers coming back on this throughout the duration of this year. I'd be happy to take any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you, Tom. Not a question, just a comment for additional clarification. We were advised that when signing off on the overarching principle, it was important that we renote the 7 existing principles as agreed by full councils to tie those together as one concept. I think that's fair, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So other than that, members, it's an update on where we were at. Work is ongoing, and obviously we are on a critical path now and a timeline aligned with the local plan. Any members got any other questions? Councillor Mason.
Again, not a question, but a comment. I think this has been going on not just the whole time I've been a councillor, but for a few decades before. I think we have now got to a stage where we can look forward with confidence. It's the first time in my 20 years as a councillor we could look forward with confidence to something which will work for Tipner, for this part of Tipner West. And I think the other important thing is that this is looking for the manufacturing future of this great manufacturing city. And that is something which I think we must hold on to above all things.
Completely agree, Councillor Mason, and the priority around unlocking the employment site is something that we've been focusing on for some time. Members, we have four recommendations in front of us, and they are to approve the revised overarching project objectives set out in the report in Appendix A, confirm the 7 principles as set out in the report in Appendix B, note the update from the project team in relation to actions taken and planned, and 4, to refer the report to full council for noting. Are we all happy with the recommendations? We are. Good. Okay, in that case, they're approved. And Tom, thank you very much. That brings us to item 5, which is an update on the civic offices regeneration, or civic offices downsizing, as we're calling it, because that's the important bit. And over to Natasha. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. So this paper is really just setting out progress to date, but more importantly, the next steps in terms of the work going forward. So the capital bid for additional capacity was approved as part of the budget process. So work will now proceed to really be future focused on what the council's future requirements are to enable the council to make some firm decisions later on this year. I think the details in the report, so happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Natasha. Members, any questions or comments? No. I think it's just important at this stage that we place this marker down, that this triggers the next stage of that work. I've never made it a secret that I think the civic offices are a disaster, and they're not providing good benefit for the public purse either, and looking after our residents' money is our primary purpose. So looking at a way to do that more efficiently is exactly what we should be focused on. So thank you very much for the updated report, and look forward to seeing progress over the rest of this year. Okay. That takes us to item 6. That's the Social Value Annual Report. Is this you again, Sasha? Okay.
Sorry, yes, me again. So this report just provides an update on our progress to develop our approach to social value since the adoption of the policy in March 2021. I'm very pleased to report a very full and active agenda of activity benefiting our communities and residents in the city over the last year, including the winning of an award for our innovative approach in developing the Portsmouth model for social value, and also outlines the work that we're going to be taking forward over the next 12 months with some particular focused target areas now, having developed the maturity of the model and being able to identify where the greatest need is in the city. So focusing particularly on our environmental agenda, as well as some target community groups such as City of Sanctuary, individuals with learning disabilities and such like. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Horton?
Yeah, just to add that, I think what this report shows is something that was sort of taken from a concept to like a real tangible report about really important outcomes. I just want to pick up on the thing around the interconnectivity of this to other bits of the council, and how important that the relationships we're building up with these organisations is. So, for example, yesterday I was at a meeting yesterday which looks like our employment academy for young people with learning difficulties or disabilities, and also our care leaver group, and actually the names listed in here are cropping up, so they feel part of Team Portsmouth, and I think that's where we'll see the tangible outcomes of what was originally an idea and a policy idea. And those case studies really do demonstrate, when you hear the individual lives that are being changed, these organisations are enabling that. And so it's the social impact, but also the value of it. So, yeah, really pleased to see this, and it does feel like it's going, from strength to strength.
Thanks very much. Members, any other comments? No, in which case the report's duly noted, and thank you very much for the update. Much appreciated, and look forward to seeing the work progress further. And I like the idea that we're now doing what I hope we'd do at the very beginning of this when I spoke to full council, is talking about the Portsmouth model, not the Preston one. So thanks very much. We're now on item 7, which is the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Strategy. Although according to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, we shouldn't be having one, according to stuff he said today. Disgraceful. Lee, over to you.
Thank you. So Cabinet previously gave approval for us to go out to consult on a strategy, which happened. The feedback from that consultation was largely agreement with the approach and the mission statement that's set out. There are some areas of disagreement detailed in the report, but that was the smaller part of the response. Actions that were set under all this reflect priority areas of work that the Council already got in track, so there's no request for additional spend or capacity being asked for, and really just looking for approval to go live with the strategy.
Thank you, Lee. Comments, Susie?
Yeah, just a quick one to pick up your point and also to emphasise the last point that Lee just made around affordability. This is embedded in the way that we work, and it relates to the previous item as well. We care about people for who they are, and we have a duty but also an absolute commitment to sort of tailoring our support to people so that they can become the best versions of themselves, really. So I know it's a strategy, but actually the most important thing is seeing the impact of that strategy, and there's some really good work being done around this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, anyone else? Hugh?
I think the other important thing is that this strategy is not a standalone strategy, as the current government seems to think that such strategies are. But this is a strategy which is embedded in all of our services, in all that we do. It is a reflection of basically who we are and the place in which we live, and it is essential. Thank you.
Thank you. And for anyone watching the live stream, this refers to comments made by the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt, where he said that council should stop wasting money on equality, diversity and inclusion. And a government that thinks that anything in terms of effort wasted on these 3 pillars is a disgrace. And I'm quite happy to say that in a public meeting. But then I'd expect nothing better from the shambles of a government. So thank you very much for bringing the update today. It's great that this is embedded across the organisation, because that's really important. And equally great that when we did the community awards the other week, we could actually see some of this work coming through with Chancellor of the Exchequer, really small amounts of money making an absolutely massive difference out in our communities, and actually some of that difference that's being made will stop acute demand at our front door, which is the most expensive bit that we're now telling you we can't afford. So councils know what they're doing, even if your government doesn't. Thank you very much. That takes us to item 8, and sorry.
It's a decision.
Oh, sorry. Okay, a minute. I've just got an annual update on the... Oh, sorry, it's my fault again. I've read the wrong item. I do apologise. I was so busy telling everybody that Jeremy Hunt's an idiot, I forgot to actually take the recommendation. So I'll go back to where I was. Jeremy Hunt's an idiot. But we note that it's recommended that the Cabinet approve the Equality, Diversity, Inclusion Strategy 2024-27 as attached in Appendix A. Are we all happy with that? Thank you. And apologies, Natasha. Jeremy Hunt's an idiot. Number 8 on the agenda today is the Water Safety Management Policy, which is Claire.
Leader, thank you very much. As you'll be aware, this policy is the culmination of some significant work by officers to review, assess and evaluate, as well as articulate all areas of land-sea interface, which is the UK's only island city, is quite a significant amount of area, and also it included both coastal aspects and inland water areas. From a national context, we had expected some legislation changes on this area of work, resulting out of the tragic loss of lives in 2016 at Camber Sands. However, that legislation change hasn't occurred, so we just felt, in working with Elizabeth Goodwin, Head of Internal Audit, that it was timely for us to do this review and introduce a policy which articulated how we were going to manage the risk, especially as a local authority which has significant water-land edges. This policy has been out for consultation. We have worked with both national large organisations such as the RNLI, but also with a much smaller number of organisations based in the city who regularly are out on and using the water, and we access and discuss with them elements through the Water Safety Forum. Mark will be following through in terms of the actual operational detail and the monitoring going forward, but we would appreciate the opportunity to bring this policy forward because we think it's a really significant missing part at the current aspect, considering the state and the geography of the city.
Completely agree, Claire. Councillor Holder?
Yeah, just want to say thank you to everyone involved in the report. It's a really important piece of work for a city that, which has been mentioned, is mostly surrounded by water. Particularly happy with the educational part of the policy, not just in schools but with the university. We get a big influx of people from all over the country that may not be used to being by the sea. And particularly also great to have the RNLI involved, particularly as they are celebrating 200 years this month. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ian. And I know this has been a piece of work sort of long in the making in order to make sure we did this, but thank you for all the work that has gone into it and sticking with it to make sure that we get to this point. It is absolutely essential that as an island city that we do take this piece of work very seriously, and I think what it has shown, of course, is that in some areas we're probably actually being overcautious in some of the things that we already do, and that we could prioritise that output elsewhere. So it's great to have that now and actually have a strategy around it. So thank you very much. And the purpose for us today then, members, is to approve the strategy. Are we happy? We are. So the water safety management policy is officially adopted. Thank you. Okay, so we're delaying item 9 for now, hoping that Councillor Winnington can get here from the other meeting that he's at. So Andy will come back to you a bit later. That takes us to item 10 on the agenda, which is the response to the systems thinking review. Who's doing that? James.
Thank you, Leader. Good afternoon. So the report you have before you follows the Scrutiny Management Panel's scrutiny of systems thinking and its use within the City Council and with partners. Their report is contained in Appendix A in full, including their recommendations, and the officer's response to those recommendations is contained in 4.2 or section 4.2 of the report that you have before you. There are no policy or budgetary impact on those recommendations. They're largely about promoting the use of the method as appropriate across the City Council and with partners as a choice amongst many others of ways in which you can review services and seek to continually develop services. There are no changes to the report, but happy to take questions.
Okay, members. Darren?
Thank you, Steve. The service I oversee was first out of the blocks with regards to implementing systems thinking, and I'm happy to put forward the recommendations in the report and also the recommendations in the scrutiny panel report. Not only are we being told that including everybody in our thinking through equality, diversity and inclusion is a bad idea, we're also under productivity plans from a government that told us to keep the border control post open even when there were no border controls. And I think using systems thinking is a way of overcoming a culture that has failed much of the public sector. I was reading about Thurrock, for instance, which is owed £700 million by a private company, who decided to borrow from other councils in order to pay for solar farms, not in Thurrock. That seems to me to be a bit mad. And I think government can also, the government that gave us the PPE scandal, money going down the toilet, could learn a lot from this. Systems thinking is not for everyone. It won't always work. There are services that rely very much on qualitative stuff, things like actually going out and talking to people on a day-to-day basis, things like the police, and that's going to be quite difficult within the model of systems thinking. But it is a way of actually making sure that the people who are involved in the jobs that are done are actually part of the whole process and part of the future organisation of what they do. And I'm particularly impressed that the scrutiny panel has recommended those two things to be increased and enhanced as part of their package. But this is a way of actually cutting through the problem that affects the public sector, which is effectively money wasted and relying too much on structures rather than people. Luckily, we as administration do it the other way around, and that's why we're actually able to save money and improve services at the same time. So I recommend the report, recognising systems thinking isn't for everyone, and I look forward to it being expanded and developed. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Darren. Members, anyone else? No. Okay. So the recommendations that we have are that we thank the panel for its work in undertaking the review and the resulting report, and secondly, we note the panel's report and recommendations set out in Appendix A, together with the officer responses to the recommendations as set out in 4.2. Are we happy to receive those recommendations? Yes. Okay. All sorted. Thank you very much, James. That takes us to item 11 on today's agenda, and that is the provision of sanitary bins in male toilets. Colette Hill.
Thank you, Leader. This report follows a notice of motion brought to full council by Councillor Ryan Brent and was to support Prostate Cancer UK's Boys Need Bins campaign. That campaign highlights that some users need to dispose of their sanitary waste. A lack of provision, there's currently no provision, and a lack of provision may cause anxiety, stress and embarrassment for users. The proposed change may help to ease some of that anxiety. The report recommends the provision of at least one bin in all male public convenience sites provided by the council. That Cabinet asks all directorates to arrange provision of at least one bin per site with associated stickers in all male toilet sites owned and directly operated by the council, and that Cabinet requests the Economic Development Team to work with Shaping Portsmouth and public service partners to influence businesses to adopt a similar approach in their male toilets. The estimated costs are attached in Appendix 1, and Appendix 2 is the Integrated Impact Assessment, which identifies no significant impacts, but rather notes that the provision will make male toilets more accessible for those users who require sanitary provision.
Thanks very much, Colette. I think this is a really good scheme and one that we were very happy to have brought to our attention. Members' comments? Dave?
Yeah. As you said, Leader, we're very happy to have that here, so especially your previous comments about the Chancellor's words about his scorn on inclusivity and equality. And I think this is important to show that we are trying to get, Portsmouth more accessible, more inclusive and more equal. So yeah, we are grateful that Ryan Brent and Ryan Brent and Gosden brought the notice of motion to the council, and we are happy as it was unanimously passed. I don't know what's up with my words today. And of course, we support Prostate Cancer UK's Boys Need Bins campaign, and we're happy to be an inclusive council looking to improve how we can do it, which is like we've been doing by putting in the change in places toilets that you see around. We are constantly looking to seek how we can improve things, so very happy that this report is here.
Thank you, Councillor Ashmore. Anyone else? Councillor Mason.
I've talked to a lot of people of my vintage about this, and what I have found is that around the country, speaking to people, there are a large number of gentlemen of my age who are very envious of Portsmouth going down this route, providing something which will give the older citizens, especially in this city, a greater degree of mobility, a greater freedom to move around the city, and a much better quality of life.
Thank you, Hugh. That's really useful feedback. Members, any other questions? No? Okay. In that case, there are recommendations before us. We are recommended that we agree to the provision of at least one bin with associated stickers in all male public convenience sites. We ask all directorates to arrange the provision of at least one bin per site with associated stickers in all male toilets at council-owned and directly operated sites. And thirdly, that we request the Economic Development Team to work with Shaping Portsmouth and public service partners to influence businesses to adopt a similar approach in male toilets. Are we happy with all of those recommendations? Okay, thank you very much. Final comment from me. When we do that last bit, we need to share with them some example costs, because it's probably that might people think, oh no, I can't afford any additional expenditure, but we do know this is pretty modest and it could be something that people realise they should be doing. Thank you very much, Colette. That takes us to 12 on today's agenda, and Guy, you weren't here when we did the introductions. I'll let James and Hill get away, get away with it. But could you just say who you are for the record for the meeting, please? Thanks.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, my name is Guy Mason, Coastal and Drainage Manager.
Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leader. Yes, the subject of the report is North Portsea Coastal Defences Scheme, and it's seeking approval from the administration for authority to be delegated to our Chief Executive in consultation with the Section 151 officer to enter into contract on construction on Phase 5. The real purpose of this is to ensure that we're as fleet of foot as we possibly can be, and to try and prevent a 6-month delay which could happen through environmental restrictions if we have any delay in the summer over appointment of the contractor.
And probably worth adding that it's important that we don't miss the seasons that we have to do the work, because we have to stop over the winter because of the overwintering birds. Is that right?
It's marginal at North Portsea, but Natural England could enforce that.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Members' comments, Hugh?
This is completing a piece of work which has been going on now for almost a decade, and I think it will benefit the northern part of this city. We have worked very hard to ensure that the homes in the northern part of the city, and also, of course, the businesses in the northern part of the city, although we don't get any money for those from the government, but the homes in the northern part of the city are made safe, and this is the last part of the northern setup which we are building, and it will give complete housing protection in North Portsea, and I think that is of great importance, because we have not merely the houses there, but we also have some very important infrastructure and some very important businesses.
Thank you, Hugh. Members, any other comments? No? Good to have an update, and look forward to that phase of work being completed, and later in the year we'll expect updates on the other 2 phases of the sea defences that are also underway on the eastern side and on the southern side. I was able to go and visit, and I know other Cabinet members have as well, the area around Southsea Castle that we're calling the Theatre of the Sea, and it really is, looks absolutely stunning. So just pass on our thanks to the team for all their efforts, and thank you to you for your effort.
Thank you very much.
Cool. So we have a recommendation. This is the important bit, that we're delegating authority to the Chief Executive in consultation with the Section 151 officer to implement and deliver Phase 5 of the North Portsea Coastal Scheme, and to enter into any design, construction or support contract arrangements required, subject to instruments including forward purchases, forward options and foreign exchange rate swaps to mitigate the foreign exchange risks. Is this right? The right thing, or is this something else? I think I've ended up with 2 bits of the same page. What's on the end of 12? I haven't got page 4 in my paper pack, so apologies for that. I thought that doesn't make sense. That's a Chris Ward language. Thank you very much. It's on the, okay, yeah, I've got it now. So I read the first bit correctly, but unfortunately I was missing page 4 in my document pack, and I thought this doesn't make any sense. So, I will read it again. Now I have all the paperwork in front of me. So it's recommended that the Cabinet delegate authority to the Chief Executive in consultation with the Section 151 officer to implement and deliver Phase 5 of the North Portsea Coastal Scheme, and to enter into any design, construction or support contract arrangements required, subject to, here we go, this is what it should have said, the maximum financial commitment from Portsmouth City Council remaining within the existing approved value of £282,000, and to allow the Chief Executive to delegate in full or part this authority to the Director of Economy, Planning and Transport. Members, are we happy with that? Thank you very much, and sorry that we nearly ended up with a very odd resolution, and I don't know why that page is missing, but it's really good that it isn't now. Thank you. Well, that was comedic. Okay, so we're moving item 13 to the end in the hope that Councillor Winnington may join us, but he may not. We are asked, please, members, to note at item 14 the Public Health Annual Report 2023. Are we happy to note Helen Atkinson's report? Yes, and I think we should add a thank you to her for that. Anna? I don't think we do, to be honest. I don't think that's necessary. So yeah, so it's only for noting, and we've all read it and are noting it. In which case we now move to item 15 on the agenda, which is the Capital Strategy 2024-25 to 2033-34. And thank you, Chris, for giving me so many recommendations I have to read out on the next item, which we'll come to shortly.
Thank you, Leader. I think you may have already read out some of the recommendations.
I think I probably did, yeah.
So this paper obviously is the proposed capital strategy for the council. It's for your endorsement, and it's to be considered and approved by full council on the 19th of March. Set out in two parts. The first part is about the strategy for capital investment itself, so how the council makes its decisions in terms of how to and when to invest in assets, but also it describes how those capital investments might be funded. The strategy is reviewed annually, so whilst it's described as a 10-year strategy, it's something that is reviewed on an annual basis, so it's a rolling strategy to accommodate changes in priorities if they arise. The strategy itself sets out the key principles for how you make those investment choices. That's in the context of the corporate plan, but it also goes on to talk about the process of evaluation as well. Section 6 is where you see a little more granular detail, both in terms of the capital investment plans for the coming year, which you will have already approved at full council in February, but also what the future capital aspirations might be as well. So that deals with part 1, and then part 2 of the report talks about the council's borrowing and investment strategy. So it starts by talking about what the overall debt position of the council is. It goes on to talk about how that debt will be managed and how that debt will be paid off over time, and what the council's policy is for the repayment of debt. It also describes some of the parameters around debt as well. So it talks about the limits. So the overall amount of debt that the council can lawfully incur, that's called the authorised limit, and again that was something that was approved by council back in February just gone. It also describes two types of investments, so moving away from the borrowing side and the capital investments that the council might make. So there's generally three types of investment, and this describes two. Those two are what are described as public service investments, and the other type of investment are commercial investments. They are the investments that the government are now seeking to curb in their entirety, because they've set rules around the ability to, not just the ability to invest, but also the ability to invest and use borrowing for those types of commercial investments. And the terminology that the government uses, that you cannot borrow purely for yield, purely for financial return. However, we set out in this report what our current investment portfolio looks like, and we set out the level of risk that the council is exposed to in accordance with those investments that the council does have. So there's a section at the back which describes what we talk about as our investment ratios. So there are a number of well-used investment ratios there, some of which you might be familiar with because they accord with what you might normally expect to hear a bank talk about when you go for a mortgage, like a loan-to-value ratio, and you'll see that our ratios are positive in that regard. Equally, there are what's called interest cover ratios, which is the extent to which the income that you receive can cover the interest costs, and again, they are positive. And there's also mention in there about the reliance of the council more generally in terms of the income it receives from investments in order to provide public services. And again, that's at a relatively low level. So don't plan to say anything else, Leader, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Members, any questions? Hugh?
This is a most interesting report. And I think the thing which strikes me in reading this, for example, in section 2, 4.13, is the way in which we are very flexible and very fleet of foot in managing our investments and managing our debts. We, unlike some other councils which do seem to be stuck in the way in which they do things, this council under the current administration and the current finance officer has been prepared to disinvest from things, invest in things, and keep them under control on a very, very tight basis. And I think this is something which we need to thank Chris Ward and his team for, because they have kept us solvent.
I agree, Hugh. Members, any other comments? No? In which case we are, I'm going to be paranoid now and double check I'm reading the right thing. I am going to check. Yes, I have the right thing. Okay, the recommendations on this item are as follows. The Cabinet recommends that full council, 1, Part 1 of the capital strategy, capital expenditure aspirations be approved, including A, the aspirations set out in section 6. And 2, that Part 2 of the capital strategy, borrowing and investing, be approved, including A, the minimum revenue provision, which is the MRP for debt repayment policy, Part 2, paragraphs 3.5 to 3.7. B, the investment indicators in Part 2, Appendix 1, Part 2, paragraphs 4.15 to 4.21. And C, that the Director of Finance and Resources, Section 151 officer, will bring a report to the next Cabinet and City Council if Part 2, paragraph 4.1, 1, the Council's gross general fund debt exceeds 400% of GF net service expenditure, or 2, overall investment income and long-term Treasury management investments exceeds 14% of general fund net service expenditure. Members, are we happy with those recommendations? We are. Thank you very much. Say that without, I certainly couldn't say that without the notes, as we discovered some moments ago. Thank you very much, Chris. And we're staying with you because it is now item 16 on the agenda, which is the Treasury Management Policy 2024-2025, found on pages 325 to 364.
Thank you, Leader. And this is a related strategy, actually. So you heard me talk in the previous paper about three types of investment, and this focuses on the third type of that investment, which I'll come to as we talk through. But it looks at what I should start with. This has already been considered by Governance Audit and Standards, as is our routine. It's here before you today for endorsement. And again, it's a full council decision, so it will be considered by council on the 19th of March. So it talks to two things. It talks to the council's overall borrowing position, and it then talks to the council's, in this instance, treasury management investments, which I'll describe as we go through, and as distinct from the other two types of investments that I described earlier, which is service investments and commercial investments. So it sets out the overall borrowing position, and similar to the previous report, and apologies that there is interference on the line. Oh, thank you. So it talks about the overall borrowing position. There's a degree of duplication between the two, but it's due to the interrelations between the different activities. So it sets out the overall borrowing position, and again, as I mentioned in the introductions to the previous report, talks about what's called the authorised limit, which is the maximum amount of external borrowing that the council sets itself. And it also looks at borrowing in the sense of it takes a forward look at what future interest rates might look like, so what the future cost of borrowing could be. It then comes back and talks about our treasury management investments. So when you read the report, you'll see that the council has surplus cash flows, and it has surplus cash flows for certain reasons. In the main, it might be because the council holds reserves. So because it holds reserves, it will want to place those reserves and get a return for them, and rather than leave them laying idle. It may well have set other monies aside for certain reasons, or it may just be that our inflows come in quicker than our outflows go out. And our inflows, for example, could be council taxes collected monthly, but our payments might go out at a different profile. So it's about the council seeking to maximise the return on those temporary cash balances that the council has. All of the money is already allocated. This is just about dealing with the timing of the cash in. Make the return that you can before the cash has to go back out. So in doing so, the council and as is government guidance as well, has an approach to managing that risk, because in the event that we place money out into a particular counterparty and that counterparty, for example, goes bust, then the council's money is lost. If the council's money is lost, remember I said that that money is earmarked for the provision usually of council services, and that will then fall as a cost to the council that it would have to deal with. So there's an acronym called SLY, which means security first, liquidity second, yield third, and that's the priority in which the council seeks to invest its capital or invest its cash. And many of you will remember the Icelandic bank crisis, when a number of local authorities invested in Icelandic banks and lost money as a consequence because those banks went bust. So it's vitally important that we have a framework around the investment of the council's temporary cash balances to protect the capital sum, which is why security is always the first priority. You'll see in the Treasury Management Policy proposed that we take quite a wide-ranging approach to risk, in that we seek to diversify that risk, and we will provide limits around, well, first of all, we will only invest in countries that have got a AA sovereign credit rating. Secondly, we'll have geographic limits, so the council will not overly invest or expose its investments too heavily into particular geographical areas. Thirdly, we'll have what are called sector limits, so that might be there's a certain amount into banks, there's a certain amount into registered social landlords, there's a certain amount into other types of institutions. So that if there's any systemic risk in the system, then the council isn't overly exposed to any of those things. And finally, there are what are called individual counterparty limits. And when we say counterparty limits, that's an organisation that we are placing our money with. Could be a local authority, could be a bank, could be what's called a money market fund, or any other type of treasury investment. And there are limits around those as well. They're usually based around credit ratings. So there's a credit limit, credit rating expectation, as well as an overall limit and a time duration as well associated with those investments. So we're seeking to manage all of those risks in a cohesive way. Finally, one other point to mention, and you'll remember that we've had this at Cabinet before, but there are also considerations around what's called our ESG policy, so environmental, social and governance factors. And whilst it's not possible to look at every individual counterparty, there are services around that can look at the credentials of those types of counterparties, and we use that screening service before any investment is made. That's an overview of what is quite a large document, but it's just to give you the assurance that there are proper procedures around managing the risk to council's funds. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Chris. Very thorough as ever. Members? Any comments or questions? No. Long and detailed, but really important, and how we manage our money, and most importantly, it's the public's money, and therefore they need to have confidence that it's being dealt with properly. And the detail within the report clearly makes it obvious that that is the case, and that we're not falling into some of the traps, a few examples of which Chris outlined. So, here we go. We are recommended that the Cabinet, 1, approve the upper limit for principal sums invested for longer than 365 days contained in section 4.6 of the attached Treasury Management Policy Statement, and 2, approve the upper and lower limits on the maturity structure of borrowing contained in Appendix 5.1 of the attached Treasury Management Policy Statement. 3, approve the attached Treasury Management Policy Statement, including the Treasury Management Strategy and Annual Investment Strategy for 2024-25. 4, note that there are no significant changes to the Treasury Management Policy for 2024-25 compared to 2023-24. 5, agree that as set out in section 1.5 of the Treasury Management Policy Statement, the Director of Finance and Resources, section 151 officer, and officers nominated by him have delegated authority to 1, invest surplus funds in accordance with the approved annual investment strategy. 2, borrow to finance short-term cash deficits and capital payments from any reputable source within the authorised limit for external debt of 1,100,000 to be approved, 1.1 billion, to be approved by the City Council on the 13th of February 2024. Schedule 3, reschedule debt to even the maturity profile or to achieve revenue savings, and 4, to buy and sell foreign currency and to purchase hedging instruments, including forward purchases, forward options and foreign exchange rate swaps, to mitigate the foreign exchange risks associated with some contracts that are either priced in foreign currencies or where the price is indexed against foreign currency exchange rates. 6, agree that the Director of Finance and Resources, section 151 officer, has the power to delegate Treasury management operations to relevant staff. And 7, agree that the Chief Executive, the Leader of the City Council, that's me, and the Chair of the Governance and Audit and Standards Committee be informed of any material variances from the Treasury management policy when they become apparent, and that the Leader of the City Council, me again, be consulted on remedial action and paragraph 1.2.3 of the Treasury Management Policy Statement. Members, are we happy with the recommendations?
In 3.52, could you remove the words "to be" before approved? Because the 13th of February 2024 has
already passed, Hugh. That struck me as I was reading it. Is that all right, Chris? Okay, Chris approves. So, okay. All noted with that one very minor amendment, but an important one, Hugh, well spotted. Thank you very much. We have now been joined by Matt Gummerson, so we did note the report, but Matt, you are here. Would you like to give any comments about it and then see if members have any questions? So that's taken us back, members, to the, 14? The Public Health Annual Report. No, Anna told me he was coming over specifically because Helen's report was on the agenda. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm here for that and the HDRC report.
He's here for the other ones as well.
Yeah.
But now you are here, did you want to say anything about the Director of Public Health's report?
Thank you, Leader, and apologies that I wasn't here when you got to the item.
That's all right, no problem.
Initially. Really just to note that the report is there, encourage yourselves and other parts of the council and other people in the city to make use of it. It provides a comprehensive assessment of need around poverty and cost of living, and makes a series of recommendations, a number of which are already underway. It's already been through Health Wellbeing Board and Councillor Winnington's decision, so it's really here just to highlight that the designed version with an executive summary that you've got, a full report and a one-page infographic are all available on the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment page of the City Council's website.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions or comments now? Susie?
Just to, I mean, the infographics, we've got used to them now, but I think it's worthwhile just looking at them again. Because when you see how small, we realise how small our city is, and that one around life expectancy never ceases to shock me. It's like 10 years difference for men from different parts of this city and 5 years for women. And I don't know whether it's on this one, but the the one around young childhood obesity, that 30% of our year 6 children, 11-year-olds, are already overweight is very sobering. But sometimes we get used to these things, don't we? We say them all the time, but it's worthwhile, I think, every so often stopping. And that infographic jumped out at me again because it's just such a challenge for us. And these are really complex issues. We haven't got simple solutions, but we should, A, never stopped attempting to work out what the solutions are, but B, considered that without all of everything that we do, how much worse it could be. So thank you for the report. I know it's been to Health Wellbeing Board and Matt's decision-making meeting, but I think it's really important that it comes here as well.
Thank you, Susie. And that kind of neatly ties into, if I take the last two items which Councillor Winnington was trying to get here for but may not make it, Matt, the Portsmouth Health Determinants Research Collaboration is actually intrinsically linked or inextricably intertwined with the comments that Councillor Horton has just made. So would you like to introduce that report, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Leader. Yes, this is a good news story. So we successfully bid for a health determinants research collaborations. This is funding from the National Institute for Health Research to develop the infrastructure in local government to undertake more research to help us understand exactly the points that Councillor Horton was making. What things can we do differently in the local authority and in collaboration with our communities and our partners to address what are long-standing challenges around health inequalities? What are the areas where we can make a difference, and what research evidence do you need as decision makers to inform that action? So that's the aim of the work. We've got development year funding for 2024, so we haven't got the full funding 100% confirmed. We have a number of milestones that we need to reach and deliver over the next year, but I'm confident that we'll do that, and we'll then have 5 years of funding to really kind of grow that research base in collaboration with Hive Portsmouth, who are working on our kind of community engagement aspects of it, and the University of Portsmouth as our higher education collaboration. Yeah, I think it's a really exciting project. The report sets out what we're planning to do in the development year, and we'll bring back our full HDRC plans when they're ready, but encourage you all to support the HDRC in whatever ways you can, and there's a number of actions in the report that we'll be bringing forward over the next 8-9 months or so.
Thank you, Matt. Members? Councillor Horton?
Sorry, I'm on my soapbox. This is such a good news story, this is millions of pounds coming into the city to work with residents about them changing the outcomes for their lives. And it's, I think it's the model that stands a chance of shifting those figures that I mentioned before. And we need to be committed in linking this up with other bits of money, like the Better Start to Life money, the family hubs. If you can pull these together and you can change the culture around responsibility, around your own outcomes, then we stand a chance of challenging those inequalities. It's great that it's done with so many key partners in the city, and I'm actually optimistic about the impact that it's going to make. I don't always say that when money comes in, but I actually think that working together around several of these genders, we've got a chance of moving the dial a bit.
Thank you, Susie. Anyone else? No. In that case, thank you for the update, Matt. Much appreciated. There wasn't a decision on that. No, that's right. Okay. So that's duly noted. Thank you very much, and thanks for joining us this afternoon. I've done my best not to rush today to give Councillor Winnington time to get here, but we are nevertheless now at that point in the agenda where we do need to address the final item that we have before us today. He may make it through the door running, but if not, then we'll cover it off. So Andy Biddle, apologies for keeping you waiting. It is item 9, and that's the adult social care self-assessment preparing for inspection.
Thank you, Leader. So the report before you is a covering report for the self-assessment that's contained at Appendix 3, and this self-assessment document's been prepared as part of the Council's preparations for the Care Quality Commission inspection of how the Council meets its duties and responsibilities under the Care Act of 2014. As set out, the request is for Cabinet to note the report, to ask me to develop an improvement plan that we then bring back to Cabinet in the new municipal year, and to take this document to the Health and Overview Scrutiny Panel in March so that they can conduct thorough scrutiny of the self-assessment. The background section sets out the statutory nature of the inspection regime and the time frame for inspection for all 153 local authorities with adult social services responsibility, and also contains more detail around how the inspection will be conducted, including potential outcomes. My apologies, there is an acronym that isn't defined, which is DAS, to echo you earlier, Leader, that's me, Director of Adult Social Services. So we'll correct that when we bring this back, because we try not to have any undefined acronyms in reports. We go on to set out the activity undertaken to produce the self-assessment with our staff, our partners and our residents, and include details of some of the support that Adult Social Care has received in preparing for the self-assessment from our peers in the Local Government Association, which has been most welcome. The report then goes on to highlight some of the successes and challenges, just picking a few out from the actual document itself, and the further preparation that we're planning to do in April 2024, along with our colleagues in the LGA. The reasons for the recommendations, I think, are fairly clear. They're about publishing this, being transparent in the work that we've been doing, the work that we need to do, in the aim of being held to account for how adult social care operates within the city and serves its residents. And then we've got those final sections that set out further information on the potential intervention. There is an intervention framework for the Secretary of State should any local authority be deemed as inadequate. And how we will tackle any need that may arise for any resource over and above the available budget. So you've got 3 appendices to all that. We felt it was important to include the first 2 appendices that detail directly the feedback that we've received both from residents and stakeholders, the evidence is how we prepared this, and then finally, as I said, that's Appendix 3, which is the self-assessment document itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Members? Councillor Horton.
It's not often we have so much social care stuff here. It's great. It's very, very important. No, I did say to Matthew that I would say something if he didn't make the meeting. So just to emphasise the good practice of doing this, obviously in children's we're well experienced in going through many, many inspections. And I think I just want to highlight the fact that while sometimes the inspection regime gets a bad press, and sometimes that's deserved, as long as you're not being told anything that you don't know, it can actually be a really positive experience. It can make you reflect, and actually it can also give you an opportunity to celebrate all that you do well. And we know we do a lot of really good stuff here. I suppose the other point is the inspections are there. The cost of not doing well is also very high to councils. So it's a really serious business, but there's a lot you can take out of it in terms of scrutinising, looking for opportunities to do better. And we all know that an organisation that reflects is definitely a healthier one. So thank you for the report. It's worth putting that marker in the sand. I know it's quite a long journey up to the first inspection, but I have every confidence that we will be able to celebrate everything that's good about us. I hope the inspections see that too.
Thank you, Susie. Well said. Members, anything additional? No. Okay, in that case, the recommendations are that the Cabinet, 1, note and report the report and self-assessment. Request the Director of Adult Social Care to develop an improvement plan for 2024-25 to address the identified areas for development in the self-assessment. 3, request the Director of Adult Social Care, that's Andy, to attend Cabinet with the improvement plan for note and feedback by the end of June 2024. And 4, refer the self-assessment to the Health Overview and Scrutiny Panel, also known as HOSP, for scrutiny. Members, are we happy with recommendations? Thank you very much, and thank you, Andy. Okay, there being no other business before us, that concludes today's agenda. This is the last scheduled Cabinet meeting for the year. That's not to say that there won't be any urgent items that crop up. That happens from time to time. But as it stands, there are no other Cabinet members in the diary before the local elections. So just take the opportunity in particular to thank our local democracy officer for supporting us during the year, and to, if anyone's online and regularly tunes into this meeting, thank you for your patience and endurance. And officers who've joined us today, thank you very much too, and I wish everyone the best for the local elections should that apply to you as a candidate. Thank you very much.